Well, Vinnie, thank you for inviting myself and VistaView Solutions to be part of your presentation here today. I'm here joined with Rainer Zinow as well, who heads up all of the products for SAP mid-market portfolio. So it is my pleasure to be part of your session and look forward to a good discussion, Vinnie.
Jory Reiner presented on all the mid-market products of SAP a few weeks ago. So this would be great to have a partner provide another perspective.
Sure. So why don't I tell you just a little bit about VistaView Solutions, and then we'll get into the good stuff around some of the technology we're working with, and more importantly, some of the technologies that our clients are working with that they're fully embracing and have now commercialized. So VistaView Solutions been around for 25 years. 18 of those years we've been an SAP partner, primarily focused on the mid-market. Specifically, we work with private equity funded, publicly traded subsidiary of large enterprise, so larger growth companies. And we provide two of the SAP products, SAP by Design and SAP Business One, and have grown to be one of the largest providers of those products in North America. And while we're very excited to be an SAP partner and have been one for a long time, we're equally excited about some of the new technology that we are bringing to market, specifically around two key areas of our business. One key area being field service and rentals, and the other key area being wholesale distribution. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the fun work we're doing in IoT inside of field service management and rentals.
This is great. I've been doing a fair amount of work in the whole area of servitization. So industrial companies moving more into field service and other, product as a service. So I'm glad you're going to present on that.
Very great. Thank you, Vinnie. So if I can, I'll just move to the next slide. So this started back in 2017 when we first were introduced to SEF. SEF is a private equity funded field service manufacturer rental company that largely services the energy industry. And we started our engagement with them by answering an RFP. And usually those don't ever go very well. But in our case, we were quite successful because we had been working on some interesting technology that we could show them that I think really fit into where they were wanting to take the industry, where they were wanting to take their business, and in doing so, take the industry. So as you can well appreciate, the energy industry is a very mature industry. It's been around forever, and those who service and supply that industry have a very common business model. So we sat down with them, and first thing we did is got SAP by Design up and running. That was the foundational core, what we call the digital core of their whole solution. Then after that, we started working with them on areas of automation. So taking out to the field, field service management, and rentals. They are a manufacturer of oil field equipment, also used in other areas of energy. They needed a way to more automatically capture what was going on in the field, capture what was going on in rentals. So we've been doing some work in IoT. And building off of their need and their want to not just embrace technology for the sake of technology, but actually with two key goals. One, increase safety, reduce the number of people in what's called the red zone. So the area around the well that could potentially be most hazardous, and also to change the business model, to move from this sort of traditional sort of by the hour, by the day rental model that exists perpetuated throughout the industry and throughout many, to something that was more consumption based, which we see today in Uber as one specific example. So we sat down, we worked with them on not only how the technology could be supportive of these two goals, but most importantly, how it could all be integrated together. Because the technology unto itself wasn't going to solve all the problems, but a single fully integrated system could. And so we did some really key things that I think have aided them in their goals, specifically around safety and around changing the business model. First thing we did is we put in automated dispatching. So the idea that the equipment, which with enough sensors on it, could tell you, hey, I'm out on a job, I'm leaving, you should bill me. So the first thing we did is work with them. They do the manufacturing. They put in about 20 sensors into their equipment, and we started capturing that data. And from the moment it leaves the yard, it can tell SAP, hey, I'm gone. I'm no longer here. You can't put me on another rental contract. Then as it moves down the road, I mean, fleet tracking is not new. It's been around forever. We integrated that capability to say, and I'm going here. When it landed on the job, because we know the operator of the leases, because we know who they're working for, we could establish or set up around that. And when it started running, the sensors would tell us, hey, I'm on, I'm working. Specifically, it would say, hey, we just had another stage. They call it a stage. And then when it wasn't working, we could tell that too, I'm idle. So those three circles, those three bullets that you see on this screen are really about the equipment talking to the system, saying this is what's happening, and removing the need for a lot of manual intervention. While it was on the job site, doing what it needed to do, they could now start billing by the stage, which is a consumption-based model, which no one else in their industry was capable of doing because the sheer volume of data was too great to manage. As it comes off the job, it can signal back to the service and repair depot, I'm coming home, I need to be recalibrated. And then in the end, based on all the data of actual usage, of wear and tear, we can produce a P&L by asset. So we can say this piece of equipment, exactly the same as this piece of equipment, operated more efficiently, required less maintenance, generated more revenue than this piece of equipment. So this is your star, this is your dog, get rid of that one. And so all of that is being predicated based on the technology that's in front of us. Things that they also adopted, and I'll just finish off with a little bit more tech, is they then said, okay, well, we can apply AI and we can tell where we are in the ground. So when they're drilling, again, you have no visibility. So where are we in the ground? They could use AI and say it was irrefutable that we were inside of the lease that we were allowed to drill in, because right now, one area of contentious issue is because you can drill down and so far across, you can actually move into your neighbor's. That's an offense. And so because they knew where they are, because they knew when they actually had the stages, because they knew how that tool was operating, they can use irrefutable data to prove or to support their customers' claim, we didn't encroach on your lease, we stayed in our own, which has only increased the value of the technology and the offering.
Have they, this is about 7-8 years ago, right? Have they moved to digital twins of each of their pieces of equipment, or is that a future?
You know, I am familiar with digital twins. I don't know that I can answer that question if they are or aren't using that, but I can tell you that their use of AI and IoT has had some pretty remarkable effects on their business.
Yeah.
And I'd like to talk to you about that if I could, Vinnie.
Sure, go ahead.
So on a daily basis, they pull about 13 million pieces of data. They analyze that in their ML models. And I think this is probably the most important one I want to point to is they've moved from 4 workers in the red zone to 1 and sometimes none. And I think, you know, when we talk about anything that's industrial, safety is always job 1, right? It's the number 1 concern. And so I think that has had a huge impact on the way their customers view them as a true partner, helping them in their mission to bring us all home safe at the end of the day. One more thing I will share is some of the realized benefits. So they had a goal of being able to continuously pump This is something that's never been done ever in the industry for 24 hours. Usually you get about 5-6 hours, got to take it down, repair the equipment, bring it back up and go again. They didn't go 24, they went over 30 hours of continuous pumping. Again, this is game-changing technology. And how they did that is because with the technology that we helped build, they played a key role, we played a key role. They built a big network operations center where they can watch from their head office in Oklahoma City all of these pumping activities occurring at the same time and make sure that they're monitoring and remotely influencing what's occurring. That I'm particularly proud of being a small part of a big story is they tripled their market share and they are now #1 in their space.
You know, the oil industry is fascinating. I spent a decade in Texas and Saudi Arabia and Netherlands, and it's just such a fascinating industry. It's a shame it's going through a, tobacco-like image, undeserved. But I'm glad to see you showing off some of the innovation. There's a lot of innovation in that industry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've had the chance to work in many different industries, and I think my experience has been I've not met greater. I mean, we've worked in the agriculture industry as well, agri-food. There's not many stewards of the environment that I've met that are more committed to environments and environmental health and safety than the oil and gas industry. So yeah, hey, every industry's got its problems, but technology is advancing rapidly to hopefully continue to move them forward to get them out of that, as you phrased it, tobacco-like perspective.
The question on the revenue side, the business model side. So could you take SAP functionality out of the box, or did you add some new functionality as they changed the business model?
Well, you know what SAP did great and continues to, it acts as the digital core. So working with the service layer, with the APIs of SAP, we were able to drive all the transactional data back into SAP and let SAP take care of all that. We talk about the billing. So while our solution captures how many stages, boom, 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 how many should they bill for? Once we have that data, we're not creating invoices, we're not managing lists, we're not all of that's finding its way back in SAP. So then they can take operational data, which we're pushing back in, and marry it up with a lot of the financial data and be able to have fulsome reporting on what's going on in their business.
Great. Because I think I'm seeing in the whole servitization space, as people move to more outcome-based contracts, they're having to custom build a lot of capability. So it didn't sound like you had to do that for this customer.
You know what we needed to do? We needed to add some functionality further. We already had IoT working with our FieldView application. We had to add some specific use cases, which we think are to the benefit of everyone using FieldView. And we needed to make sure that we tied more of that operational data back into SAP, which both things were, I wouldn't say they're easy, but they were very achievable. And SAP made it easy. They worked very closely with us.
Great.
And Vinnie, if I just may add to it, this shows exactly what we also discussed the last time. If I would propose an SAP solution to such a customer, the customer's reaction would be, sorry, you understand nothing about my industry. You can't address my problems. Go away. But if Jory shows up and says, look, I know exactly what your burning problem is, and I do it on a rock solid platform, then the customer says, this sounds interesting. It keeps me out of trouble on the transactional side system of records, but it gives me the leading edge that I need in the industry to change the way how the industry works. And that is why SAP completely and utterly relies on Jory to deliver this part, because that is something that we just can't do.
Well, I think, Rainer, you're being modest. SAP is respected in oil and gas. But it is good to see, unfortunately, sometimes SAP tends to rely too much on the big integrators. It's good to see a partner that can, deliver a very, very unique value proposition. So,
Yep.
kudos on both grounds. Jory, did you have another case study, or did you want to talk some more about this?
You know what, Vinny? I thought I'll stop sharing and let's just talk about what questions you have. I'm sure I can talk all day about different things we've done, but I'd be curious to hear what you care about.
Well, so Reinhard, good to have you back. And one of my Reinhard, as you and I have discussed, I've had several different SAP vertical heads present to me in the last 6 months. I had to push Peter Meyer quite a bit to allow me to talk to these people. Well, now that I have, I've had the aerospace guys, I've had the retail guys, I've had the utility guys all present on the big changes in each industry and how SAP is reacting. You made a comment that you're getting more and more into micro verticals with partners like Jory. So tell me some other Jory stories, and then Jory, tell me, you mentioned you had another beyond energy. You're doing some other industries. So let's start with Jory. Tell me what other industries you bring value to.
Great, thank you. So while the application was for a company that services energy, I think the application itself is broader. It's really relevant to companies that are doing rentals, that are doing any form of manufacturing, or that are doing anything to do with service and repair. So those three groups. The other area we're really deep in is wholesale distribution. And in wholesale distribution, we're seeing a lot of need and a lot of want for automation, whether it's an understanding of where, especially today, where my stuff is in the supply chain, and an ability to trace the movement of it. So areas like container management, freight management, wholesale or warehouse management, those areas. So we've had these modules for quite a while. Those areas are really, really rocketing because of what we see as being clear problems resultant from COVID around supply chain management.
So how many of them are stuck in just west of Los Angeles?
Yeah, stuck in the Suez Canal. It's interesting. We've got a very large distributor of bulk paper and packaging who's telling us right now that the price of the container is almost as much as the price of the materials inside of it. And so they need a better way and a different way in order to move that. So some of that we can control. Some of that is just pure logistics on their part around where are they sourcing from, where are they producing that. And again, these are big infrastructural decisions, right? Because we're talking about plants, we're talking about big equipment.
In the transportation logistics area, what are you finding with both B1 and BYD? Out of the box, can you use it, or are you having to?
I touched on one of the topics, Vinnie, that you mentioned, or I said also that we really rely on the partners to drive the verticalization and micro verticalization. Verticalization is pretty obvious, and there the partners do something similar for me. What Peter Meyer does from the larger industries with his organization. The important thing to understand is a mid-market company, the ones that Jory is serving and that I have on my radar screen. They don't have the capacity to turn a general solution into something specific that fits their micro vertical. Therefore, when I was working 10 or 15 years ago with BASF, I could basically put a solution on their desk and they would say, yep, we see what we can change and we will do it. In the mid-market, it's all about the customer. When they look at the solution, they need to see themselves. They need to see their business. They need to hear their language. And that is what the partners do for me. So in all of the industries that Jory mentioned, we typically have one or two highly specialized partners. I have one here in Germany who Jory is also working with, they developed handheld scanning solutions for warehouse operations. Sometimes that a lot of companies need, but where I said, hey, I can't win this race with all of this hardware innovation in that area. I rather go for specialized partners. And the next round now is that we network up the partners so that all partners have transparency what other partners are doing and that they weave a mesh. So that's the way forward.
Jory, it was great to hear about the energy coverage you have. You mentioned you have some other industries you service. Talk about those.
Great, thank you. So, you know, the example that I cited was really focused on a company that services the energy industry, but fundamentally what the company does, field service management, manufacturing, rentals. And I think the solution is applicable regardless of the industry served to those types of businesses. Other areas that we're having a lot of success in, actually where our number one client base is wholesale distribution. And that's been a big area for us. So everything from container management, which again, if you've been following the news and you know about all the ships out at sea right now stuck in ports, as well as what happened in the Suez Canal, you know, container management is a huge topic. We actually have a customer today who's told us that the cost of a container is almost as much as the cost of the contents that they're shipping inside of it. So it's a very real problem in supply chain management. We have other solutions on freight management and specifically algorithms to minimize the cost while speeding up or finding the fastest route to that endpoint. And then the final area is wholesale distribution is warehouse management. And so we have all of the barcode scanners, the RFID type capabilities to better manage and get the right packaging out to the customer. And most recently, what we've observed and what we're starting to partner with is these whole automated warehouses. We have a customer of ours who has automated pick and pack. It's most, you know, they're out of New Jersey. They do torquing equipment. They do industrial equipment. So they are a B2B business. This is not B2C. And they have completely automated the warehouse. It's quite fantastic to see where, again, and I'll get a little bit outside my expertise, but everything's running on conveyor belts. Everything's in these tall stacks.
Yeah,
and the robots are out picking this stuff, putting in the bin and bringing it to someone to finally, again, put the label on it and ship it out. Everything else is automated. It's quite astounding.
Jory, I've run episodes on Amazon's fulfillment center. I've interviewed the co-CEOs of Three Rivers that are the Shopify automated warehouse, and I've had a couple of others who've talked about. It's amazing what some of these bots can do. Both in the BYD and the B1 space, what are you finding there in the distribution logistics area? How much is out of the box and how much are you having to add or partner to supplement?
Vinnie, if I could just step back for 1 second. When I say it's amazing, I think what I find most amazing is how affordable these solutions are becoming. You know, when you're the size of Amazon, okay, I get it. I get that robots and automation, yeah, you can spend the money to make that happen. But this company, this is a 300-person company using this kind of technology. This is astounding to me that the technology itself has become so affordable. And to Reiner's point, that companies without teams of IT people can actually make this stuff work. So it's great. It's a fun time to be in tech.
Well, you're being nice to Reiner. Can we blame him for all the container problems in Los Angeles?
That's probably someone at SAP with their finger on the button, huh?
We can all jointly try to raise an incident in our support organization. Number one, how long it takes until they reject the ticket. No, but to that point, and very seriously, most of the discussions that I'm having at the moment, specifically here in Europe with lots of my customers, is coming out of COVID. coming out of situations where harbors, entire harbors get closed down. They say the risk, they always knew that they are running a relatively high risk. But in hindsight, they say that the risk is way too high. So they all discuss second source. And that's where these kind of algorithms come into the game, where you then say, okay, what is my second source now? Is my second source maybe a provider from a European perspective more in the eastern part of Europe, or is it somebody maybe in Latin America? I hear a lot about the topic of the reindustrialization of North America, that companies say, hey, probably we outtasked way too much to East Asia, and we can't run that risk anymore. We rather pay a bit more, but therefore we have a second source. So therefore, managing the supply chain, having visibility about the supply chain. I actually know a few people who were heavily involved with the accident in the Suez Canal. And they said it took way too long to find out what was actually on that ship and to decide, how do we do it? Do we send another shipment or do we wait? So there is a lot of work for us all to be done in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, the whole logistics area is getting a big wake-up call, isn't it? Tell me, I mean, it's been impressive to listen to Jory talk about energy and now distribution logistics. Tell me about some of the Jorys in your ecosystem that cover some other verticals or micro verticals.
Well, then we have a wide array, especially, for example, in the agricultural industry. There are partners who have specialized, for example, on all of the production of organic food. Organic food is all about trust, and to provide there the necessary transparency on where was the stuff produced, how did it get shipped, along the entire supply chain is an area where some partners have specialized, put tracking and tracing capabilities, similar to the ones that Jory described, in place. The old buzzword of blockchain, there is really adding value for a change. And it's not about speculation, but it is all about that you can really be sure that this biologically grown tea that you see, really you can see where it was grown. Or we have a company here in Germany, they put RFID tags, the ones which you can access, I think it's an NFC chip at the end of the day. They put this chip behind the label on the wine bottle. So what they do is they collect the data in the vineyard, sun, rain, a bit more geographical information, where is it? And I once visited them and said, yeah, you harvest the whole thing, then everything comes back comes into the big mill. And they say, no, that's not the way we do. We harvest, and the moment it arrives in the winery, we create by design a batch. And we track that batch through the entire production process. So we can really say this bottle of wine stems from this and this vineyard and got collected under these and these terminal conditions. And they say the consumers are really interested in that kind of information. And they've done it for the wine industry, they've done it for the milk industry. So even in those very traditional industries, a lot of innovation is happening via the partners.
Yeah, I remember talking to a German grocer, and they said people really love to meet their farmer. I mean, on social media, they would say, watch out for this batch. There's something wrong with this particular batch.
Yeah. No, and I talked to one dairy company, and they publish on this milk boxes. They publish a tag where you can trace back which was the farm, and they said they were quite astonished how many people actually show up at the farm and say, I wanted to know where my milk comes from.
Good to know. Tell me about some other industries.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I picked our book, and we've described in this book here SME innovation programs. I'm sure that it's available somewhere on the internet by Paulo Almeida. Yeah, augmented reality for advanced manufacturing, blockchain batch tracker. What is this here? I don't know what that is. That is all about.
It'll be a good insomnia reliever for me. So send me a copy, and
Yeah, no, we
here.
will organize that here. Or Agilita chatbot solutions. The whole use of natural language processing, specifically in a manufacturing environment or when you are in a car, is something, yes, where I can deliver enabling technology, but I can't even come up with all of the things that my partners will do and turn that into customer value. Yeah, Alexa integration for an automotive industry, machine interfacing and production controls. So we will send you the book, but there are hundreds and hundreds of micro vertical specialized solutions. That's the secret sauce behind Business One.
Fantastic. Jory, question for you. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly SAP is in just about every industry, just about every country.
Sure.
How do you resist, or how do you decide where to go next? Do customers drag you there, or are you looking at it and saying, I would like to be in that sector? Tell me your philosophy.
Yeah, good. So we have a specific strategy that we are executing on for Vistaview, what we are really good at. So when we talk about what makes us us, I think it's really a culmination of three things. I think it's certainly the products that we can bring, FieldView, Resolve is the wholesale distribution, that differentiate us in the market. I think it's, so when we talk about IP, intellectual property, it shows up in our products. It shows up in our people. So we have people with deep understanding of wholesale distribution. We have people with deep understanding of what happens out in the field, whether it's a rented asset or whether it's an asset used to service. And I think the third area that we believe strongly differentiates us in the market is the customers, and let me be more specific, the user's experience. We think the user experience, we don't sell ice cream and balloons, right? We sell ERP, and that's, we think it's really important to go out of our way to delight the customer. And so we put an inordinate amount of dollars, time, focus on that customer experience. And so when you ask about where we're going, I'll tell you what, we make a decision. Our first decision is, can we win here? And when I say win, can we drive reference clients here? Do we offer domain expertise with our people, with our own products? And can we delight the client? If we can, let's go. If we can't, let's not. So I think a lot of our decisions on geography and product mix are always passed through that filter.
Great. Rainer, one question for you. I mean, clearly you've got this ecosystem of juries. SAP at the corporate level has a big systems integration ecosystem. You've got the SAP store with a bunch of ISVs growing, right? I interviewed the executive at Salesforce who manages all three. In his case, the ISVs, the Force.com ecosystem, and increasingly the developer ecosystem. It seemed a little more coherent. With SAP, it just seems like it's still fragmented. Is that an unfair statement? What are you seeing to bring it all together?
The challenge is not to overdo what a company like SAP thinks it should do. So basically, SAP always has been a platform business. Even if you go back to the old days of R3, it was the Accentures and the Deloittes who put additional solutions for specialized industries on top. And whenever SAP tried to regulate something, it was not to the very best interest of everybody. So where we got it wrong, where we got it right, where we really got it right was in the business one space, or is in the business one space. So we focused on delivering the platform very much like Salesforce does it with Lightning, or formerly force.com. And we established certain ground rules. And the ground rules were mostly making sure that the partners knew each other. So that we put steering committees in place, that we brought together partners who are working in similar industries and said, why don't you network? Because the unique thing about my part of the market is most of the mid-market is local. So as Jory is local to his industry and his part of the world, his solutions that he's building, they are equally valuable in other areas of the world. So my job is more to make sure the platform is there and that I provide store.sap.com, where I try to motivate my partners to list as many capabilities as they have. Because what has changed in the last 5 years, 5 years ago, the normal mid-market company would not dare to even come close to an app store and say, hey, this country version or this industry-specific extension sounds interesting. But with the new generation of people coming into the companies, it is for them, it's perfectly normal to say, hey, we plan a rollout to Chile. Let's see in the App Store who has a country version. They are not at the point where they then press the button and say download and off we go. There they go back to the partner and say, hey, we found this and this. But that is the transformational change that we are orchestrating, provide the platform, provide some basic rules of the game. I also fight every day against people who believe we should now say this and this partner only. If Jory is convinced of his solution, he's not worried about 5 others doing exactly the same thing, because he will say, hey, there's more attraction in the marketplace. This is good for us. So my job is to network Jory. His job is to deliver the solution. And then the whole thing can work.
Jory, I'm going to give you the last word. So just like you said, you've obviously built all the warehouse bots. You managed to bring in all those suppliers together. Would you like to keep doing that on your own, or do you want SAP to provide more capability in terms of expanding the ecosystem, introducing you to more partners, and so on?
Okay, if you'll allow me, Vinnie, I just want to expand on a previous question that you asked, which is how do we decide where we go? And I talked about the filter we look through, but if I could add to it by saying, here's what's on my mind right now, because it's on my customer's mind right now. So I had an opportunity most recently to travel again, which was really novel and scary and exciting all at the same time. And I had a chance to sit in the boardroom of a very large multinational chemical manufacturer and met with the president CEO of that company. And he said, you know, Jory, what I'm caring about these days is really 3 things. He talked about cybersecurity, hugely important as the head of his company. The second one he talked about is diversity and inclusion, which is even broader, right? It's the DIEA. And he talked about, and I thought this was particularly relevant to his industry, but more generally to the market as a whole. He talked about the IFRS requirement on scope 1, 2, and 3 of greenhouse gas emission reporting. And so the whole idea of carbon accounting and those areas, to me, so as the saying goes, if my customer's interested in that, I'm infinitely fascinated by it. So for me, I'm infinitely fascinated by how VistaView will play a role to help support our private equity funded subsidiary of large enterprise, publicly traded customers align themselves and better report on those 17 sustainable development goals published by the UN, of which those are 3 of them. So that's, if you're asking where we're headed, we're aligned to our customers and our largest customers' needs and wants. If we talk about, so I'll maybe just take a beat there for a second. Anything further on that? Because I just wanted to add that in to make sure I rounded it out.
Tell me about the SAP ecosystem, then I'll come back to you, because
Sure.
part of, clearly you deal with the energy industry, and we mentioned it's going through a image issue right now. Well, the reality is we're not going to replace fossils for a long time. 85% of the world's energy comes from that. And yet we're
Sure.
behaving like renewables can do it overnight. It ain't going to happen, right? So, I mean, I'd like to understand how you're going to balance the tension that is clearly coming up more and more. But tell me first about, what would you like SAP to facilitate in terms of your partnering in other areas?
And if I could, what do I think about the ecosystem of SAP? I think the landscape's changing for the system integrator. The idea of putting floors of SAP consultants into your customer and billing them X amount per hour is dead, if not dying. I think the role of the system integrator today is you got to show up with expertise, you got to show up with IP, you got to add value, because, and especially accelerated by COVID, geography is no longer a competitive advantage. If I can get a question answered and it costs $150 or $200 or $250 an hour in Dallas, Texas, or I can get that same answer out of Sri Lanka for $20 an hour, it's the same answer. So from a system integrator, what do I expect from SAP? Build us a platform that automates as much of the services as possible. Get rid of those billable hours and the effort, the heavy lifting it takes to get the customer up and into the system, because the real value we can add is once they're up and live. Once they're using the system, whoa, what we're great at, what Vistaview is great at, is land and expand. But we can't do that until they get up and get live. So let's get rid of all that noise that it takes to get the customer into the system, and let's get the real value going.
Jory, this is like balm for my heart, because I've been screaming for 30 years now, integrators, get out of the people business. I came from Pricewaterhouse, and for some reason, many of them still want to keep selling bodies, still selling ours. But to your point, get it there. People are willing to pay for outcomes. People are, just don't, let's not nickel and dime them. Ryder, any final thoughts?
Nope. You heard Jory, and what he says, for example, you can see the impact on my roadmap. We just worked on the capability that partners can build implementation templates on their own, so that Jory can sit down in his office, configure a by design system for a specific industry, press a button and save the content. When the next customer comes, he doesn't start from ground zero. He says, I import the template that I've built, and because his ambition is, and that is the important thing, his ambition is not to grow his implementation project to hundreds of person days, but rather do it in 10 days, set the customer live, and watch what's happening. Because once the customer is live, from my selfish standpoint, the likelihood that they will renew just has gone from 0% to 90%. If they don't go live, it's a waste of time. And once the customer is live, they start to come up with own ideas what next they could do.
Jory, I look forward to sitting down with you over a Molson, and let's talk about the energy sector and all the transition we're going through right now. I know it's very politically noisy right now, but clearly important that we smoothly manage that transition. So thank you very much. Great insights on the stuff you're doing. Rainer, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vinnie, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to chat. Have a great day.
Have a nice weekend.